Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here and no Bob Stewart over there. That's right, folks. I said in our last interview that I wished Bob wasn't around that one because I was having such a great conversation and Bob kept interrupting with other questions. And then what does he do? This one he gets pulled away from. So Bob, I hope you're okay wherever you are, whatever it is you got pulled away to. Yet I'm going to enjoy the heck out of the opportunity to have a conversation without you interrupting me and asking such smart questions like you do, Bob. Folks, here at Win, Make, Give, you know we're focused on health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. All of it. We're going to sometimes bring you a little bit of health. We're sometimes going to talk wealth, although you should always be going back to the wealth series that we have, which you can find at www.winmakegive.com/wealth, where you're getting the 16 episode series and workbook that came with it to be able to change your financial position for the rest of your life. We are absolutely going to talk leadership, which is what we're highlighting today in this conversation. And I don't think there's a conversation that anybody ever has that doesn't impact legacy. Because when you take something you learn and implement that in your life, your family, your business, you are just adding it to your legacy. And that's something that's going to happen today on the conversation. I know it. You know it. We all know it. Now let's figure out who we are talking to today since Bob did not join Chad. That's right. I am instead being joined by the lovely Louisa Loran. Louisa, thank you for joining us here at Win, Make, Give.
Lovely to be here.
We don't do bios. Your team sent over, actually you sent over personally, but you sent over your marketing package. It's beautiful. It's got all this wonderful information. It's got your book we'll talk about. It's got more. It's got your bio, and I don't care because we want to know who you really are, not what ChatGPT wrote for you as your perfect bio. So Louisa, introduce yourself to our audience, please.
So who am I really? Good question. I love that it's not just about what we do and what we've achieved. Who am I really? I am a curious person who believes that you can always raise the bar, feels comfortable at each level, and is at the same time empathetic enough to give a sharp message, but always with a smile.
And where is that curious person located?
In Denmark right now. So I live just north of Copenhagen. So it's late in the evening, pitch black here, but full of energy nonetheless.
Okay, so now I want to know for my sake and our audience's sake, because this is our time block, and it always is, and it's the one that works for Bob's and my, which is why we use this as our schedule. So, folks, we are recording this at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which if I do the quick math, 10 o'clock, I don't know how many hours exactly you're off.
9 p.m. here.
Okay, so it's 9 p.m. Now, is that a normal time that you're normally still up working because you work with a lot of East and American-based people? Or did you have dinner early and tell all your friends, I have to go back to work now?
So it is quite normal. I'm very accustomed to working with people anywhere around the world, early morning, late nights. I spent the last 4 years in Google and, of course, West Coast there. But I can actually say that I did not do early dinner. Instead, I actually spent the evening with the Danish ambassador to the US. So very interesting evening to...
Okay, that's pretty damn cool that just earlier today for you were with the American ambassador.
Reverse, the Danish ambassador.
The Danish ambassador to America. Yeah. Okay. This is not in your package anywhere. This is not something we had talked about. I got to know. Tell me one lesson that came from that conversation today that everybody needs to know. We don't need to know where the secret weapons are and all that stuff that's happening, but a lesson that came.
A lot of lessons. I would say one thing that's quite interesting to think about is that Denmark is 6 million people, as in minuscule, but it is still a bigger trade partner to the US than both Brazil, Italy, and China, which I think is very interesting from a perspective of you have a small country with clearly some capacity to develop some thinking, otherwise there wouldn't be anything to trade with. But at the same time, you also have the need for the US muscle to actually scale it into the world.
Okay. Folks, small can still be mighty.
Yes. So this is not a Denmark promotion, but it just got us there in the conversation. I found that very interesting. And it was a very interesting conversation as well about leadership, politics, And how does one still, let's say, take different values and operate in whatever context you have?
So give me a leadership lesson that came in a conversation between you and the ambassador. I mean, that's not just some person on the street. That's the ambassador. What was a leadership lesson that came out of it?
Well, I think like everyone, you sit in an environment, and today, of course, the environment we were talking about was the business context that is created by the current government in the US. And we talked about how different forms of leadership go in and out of fashion, and how does one still stay true to your values and acknowledge that actually you may have a certain leadership style when someone else has a very different leadership style, and you need to both balance, let's say, progressing with that individual while at the same time keeping your own integrity intact.
And boy, that's a challenge.
It is a challenge, but I must say, moving away from the current political environment, I would say anyone who's been in a big corporate knows that politics is part of the game. I have been in very, very different industries. I've been at Moet Hennessy and Diageo, some of the world's largest spirits and alcohol companies. I have been with Maersk, world's largest shipping and logistics company, and I've been with Google. All of them, of course, have very, very different cultures. One is French, one is British, one is Danish, one is American. And for all of them, you need to, of course, understand what are the strengths in terms of capabilities, but also how do you navigate and complement what is already there so you actually add value during that time.
We can keep going on this, right? Because, and you're right. It's look, before this conversation with you, the only thing I honestly really could say I knew about Denmark was Jonas Vingegaard. Right? That's probably the only thing I could have ever said. If someone said, tell me something about Denmark, I would have said Jonas, because I'm a cycling fan and obviously, recognize one of the best in the game right now. Let's stay away from politics in the sense of, the administration, the ambassador and all that. Yet you're right. Politics are everywhere, using the different term of it. You were in different companies, some major companies there you just dropped for us. They have different backgrounds, right? West Coast and I think you said Swiss, one of the, right? And all the different places. Are there any similarities you find that does not matter? Leadership is leadership no matter, or were each one so completely unique that we really need to be prepared that there's that many different leadership forms, models, systems out there?
Well, of course, there are, let's say, similar patterns, there are behaviors, etc. But I think the more interesting lens on this and what I have gathered throughout my career and what I'm sharing wider in more audiences now is that actually you need to find out which things should you learn from who. So the traits I'm really looking at and the behaviors I've seen of those who are both best at, let's say, leading through change, managing ambiguity, defining new paths, etc., actually have four quite characteristic behaviors. So the first one I've really called out is about envisioning ambitiously, this opportunity to see the future, to be curious about what's happening, to recognize patterns and see how that moves from one industry to another. It doesn't take a lot of reflection to think about which companies you see a lot of that in. A second behavior, which is just as important once you've seen that beautiful place out there, is to expand with curiosity. So use the collective intelligence, partner, stand on the shoulders of others, have generative conversation. Once again, it's not difficult to see which companies enable platforms for some of these. And these companies today have actually partnered their way to such a huge market wealth today that they are representing a significant share of the market. But once you've then seen the potential, you've, let's say, collaborated your way to achieve that goal, one of the things that is just as important is to actually be able to steer decisively. And here we're talking about a completely different skill set, a different set of role models, if I can call it that, from a corporate perspective, of being able to prioritize clearly, to communicate, to staff appropriately, staff for the future, and at the same time be very aware of, let's say, the nervous system of an organization and how you play with that to move to where you want to go. I would say many of those companies that we've all thought about in the first two categories simply haven't built those skills. They haven't had the experience, and unfortunately are not as strong at it always. And the last behavior is the most distinctive one, I would say, and that's really about embodying change, embodying it with presence. These are the companies and individuals where you see that they can survive decades, even centenaries, because they are able to grow through change and reposition them appropriately through this. So instead of saying what's the common things, I would say these are the four that I firmly believe are the ones that set you up to be a great leader in any context. And there are different people who excel in each of them.
Yeah, I would think Google did well at the first few that you were talking about. And I would think that, and I never get the company's pronunciation correct, our largest shipping company in the world there that you worked with, Maersk.
Maersk.
Right? Maersk, okay.
But you know the containers, right?
Yep. They're probably really good at the other stuff on that list, as you're saying. I mean, they've been around forever, to my knowledge. You know, they just, or at least seem to have been around forever when it comes to it. But and folks, these lessons that Louisa just shared with you, that she just mentioned, her four essential behaviors, as she referred to them, of envisioning with ambition, right? It was expanding with curiosity. It was steering with decisiveness, and it was embodying change with presence. We're going to hit on these in a second. I want to go deeper. You can find out more about them in her book, which is Leadership Anatomy in Motion. Now, best place to get the book? Is it your website? Is it Amazon? Because that's the best place to get everything.
Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
And every other bookstore that you want to go after, but Amazon's the safe choice, right?
There you go. Go to Amazon. It's Leadership Anatomy in Motion, Louisa Loran. Easy to find when it comes to that. Let's look at those four areas, because I was really hoping we would get into a conversation somehow, and you went right to them right away, took that as the key lesson. We have a ton of entrepreneurs listening to this call. Yep. We have some who are employees, some who are the leader of the organization, some who are leaders within the organization, yet still employees, but entrepreneurs on their own. Okay, we've got them all. Let's break these four down a little bit, and help them identify where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Do they need to be able to do all four, or is it okay if they have two as their strengths, as long as maybe their right-hand person has the other two? Let's talk about these signs of them, indicators of them, and let's start with envisioning with ambition. Everybody knows how to dream big, yet I think you mean a little more than that.
Yes, and I'm glad you say everyone knows how to dream big, but I think a lot of people forget how to dream big, right? Many people who go to work every day, they think they're completing a task instead of saying, actually, what is the best potential way to achieve this? We have a lot of people just being busy, ticking a box or serving a middle manager or whatever it may be. So that principle of being able to dream is definitely something that I'm appealing to people bringing into the workplace again. I think a lot of the envisioning ambitiously is also about seeing beyond the immediate constraints, because that's where you also start to see how you and your business can be relevant as business models change. Because what we're seeing quite a lot of now is that investments go more and more into technology, AI solutions go and replace parts of businesses. And if you do not have that curiosity, that ability to dream and imagine yourself there, then you are not even seeing those opportunities to step into. So some of the people I've worked with on this, we do simple things like try to imagine someone else owned us, try to imagine we had different skills, try to imagine we were in different contexts, simply forcing the brain to rewire and generate new synapses to come up with new solutions.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's envisioning, folks, making sure that we're doing these things. How about expanding with curiosity? I mean, I say we all, our audience all want to grow. And we know that to be big, the best way to do it is to expand and grow, cover more territory, offer more products, services, whatever that's going to be. Not everybody necessarily gets expanding the same, yet you don't just say expand, you say expand with curiosity.
Yeah, because I think, as you said, entrepreneurs, they have typically a part of that envisioning, but expanding with curiosity is just as much acknowledging that you can't do everything yourself and that you actually can achieve more by standing on the shoulders of others. And this is really where, let's say, taking the shift from being inside a traditional corporate organization to landing into a tech-born company like Google, you see the difference of actually just enabling people to contribute in every sense. And when you combine these two, you actually start seeing that it's not about saying, dear team, I expect you to achieve this goal by the end of the year, but saying, here's a direction, and let's see who has something to contribute to it. And you build the path as you go along it. That also means that if you are expanding with curiosity, you're also curious about the external market and willing to kill your darlings in the process. If someone has developed something that can achieve it faster and better, and actually that your proposition with that can be stronger again. And that's definitely something that I see a lot of entrepreneurs. They're so passionate, so focused that actually they forget to look wider and forget to have those generative conversations where it's actually about two people creating more value together than they could have done individually.
We all hear the tales of Google. Yeah. Right. I mean, especially here in America, where most of our listeners are based, America, Canada, and all that. So Google is, put up on this pedestal of is it true? I mean, from being are they having these conversations with the lowest of level employee regularly? I mean, are they looking around and going, oh, Apple beat us to that. Let's figure out how we work with that now instead of attempting our own? Or maybe a better example would be like ChatGPT or OpenAI or something instead of Apple, the enemy. But I mean, is it true? Is Google really all that we hear it is?
Well, so is Google an expert in this? Absolutely. The potential is there, the availability is there, the technology is there. Even in other companies, I've experienced this point that you create a document and everyone has access, but you really locked it into only the people that you think should see it. Whereas in Google, I could go to sleep at night and wake up in the next day and have comments from colleagues anywhere around the world who had complementary thinking to what I was working on. And in that sense, we were building upon each other's and therefore making it stronger. I was still in charge of deciding whether an idea went in or out, but that idea of actually sharing it. I think the flip side and the, let's say, overplayed strength of this, if you don't give people a direction and a sense of purpose and steer it that way, then indeed you just get a bunch of mushrooms, right? Then you get people just coming up with random ideas, and that's lovely and good for you, but we're actually trying to create a healthy business here. So I think from an enablement perspective and from a potentials perspective, absolutely. I think what we are seeing now is that actually the market is moving in a way where more clarity is more obviously seen as a benefit. And I think the whole ChatGPT, Gemini launch is a really interesting one because most people do know that the work that actually formed the foundation of ChatGPT, the document called Attention is All You Need, was a document written by people. Majority of them were working in Google at that point in time when they wrote it in 2017. But true to this way of thinking, it was published, it was made available, and several companies, almost all of the big tech companies, invested in learning based on this transformer way of thinking. And then ChatGPT came to market. But of course, one cannot speculate on what would have happened, but the principle of saying, I have something, I'm going to make it available to market, we're all going to invest in making it sharper, and I will have a smaller piece of the bigger cake instead of sit here with my own private cupcake in the corner, is exactly the thinking and growth that means that now we have 7 or 10 companies that have 40% of the global wealth.
Right. That's a great analogy you put, folks. You could have your cupcake and sit in the corner and eat it on your own, or you could have a big slice of the sheet cake. Yeah. Right. Because and there's going to be a lot more to that sheet cake, and you're going to have better conversation eating it when you're sharing it with everybody than when you're sitting in the corner just having your own little cupcake. Nothing wrong with a good cupcake now and then, though. Let's go to the third one here. Steering with decisiveness.
Yes.
So I think that my personal opinion is this is a challenge for most entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
Because
It's their baby.
right. And they envision and their baby's going to become massive and expanding. Okay, I can bring that person in because I can see we can expand bigger in these opportunities. But steering with decisiveness, there's always that, but maybe, right? And all of that. How does an entrepreneur succeed with steering with decisiveness as part of or a leader use that as part of their building?
I think a large part of this is exactly what you're alluding to now. It's being very aware of your own emotions and knowing that, for instance, what you hear is not what's going to be required for the next phase. So the principle of saying I am staffing for the future, not from where I am now, and quite clearly saying, well, if that is a significantly different skill set, then chances are you're going to change 30% of the people who contribute to you. And if that happens to you, be your brother and your neighbor, etc., of course, it's harder to say, but there is that reality and that honest conversation of saying we're not going to achieve it if we just bring in the same. So do we want to fail together, or do we actually want to separate and achieve a success that you can contribute to in another way? And then I think a lot of this steering decisively is also managing the organization and managing the ecosystem around you through clear communication. There are so many good ideas, so many interesting initiatives. But if you are bringing something new to market, or if you are transforming a big business to something different, you have a responsibility to communicate to your investors, to your partners, etc., where you are on this journey. Also signaling some of the hard parts. Because I think where people are like, well, we're just going to watch and see what happens, etc. If you don't take your best people and put it on the thing that you have said is the thing of the future, why should they believe that any change is going to happen? So this is a much more, let's say, rational piece of it. It doesn't mean that it's cold, but it's more saying, I will do what it takes in order to achieve that, and then treat people with respect.
You know, since I brought up Jonas Vingegaard earlier in the world of cycling, it makes me think of the Tour or any of the large races where they have to decide to leave their team behind at some point and go attack that mountain because that's their strength. That's their ability to say, I want to bring us the victory. Yeah. I have to be able to say, it's no longer time for the rest of you, and make the right choice and go on and do the attack that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I would say one of the things I spend a lot of time when I work with executives now, but also put in the book, is understanding like the unwritten rules of an organization. What's the nervous system? How do decisions get made? Who are the change makers? Who are the followers? Who are the sponsors, etc. So put yourself in the third person and look at these players that you have, because then it's actually quite clear who needs to do the sprint and who needs to accept that you are still part of the winning team, even though you are the last to pass the finishing line.
Boy, folks, that's a hard one right there, right? It's very clear on a sporting team to say this is the star and everybody knows their role and that's what they were signed on to. Yet in business, it's not always so clear and everybody thinks they're the key, right? Yeah. Being that entrepreneur, being that leader, even if it's not the boss, it might be a different level. Not everybody's equal. And we have to remember that if we're going to, one, have the envisioning, then being able to expand and steer, we have to be honest with who is who, where their limits are, where their strengths are in every organization. And as you said, sometimes we need to part ways with those people because they're the thing holding us here. That if we replace them, we could go there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this links really well to the last one.
Yep.
Embodying
change, right? With presence.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about that fourth one.
Because this is exactly the one. And you asked the question, like, can I have a team that just does this? Of course, the people who are best at this, they practice all four behaviors and they repeat and they enhance and they do it again and again with small change, big development, all of this. Same for companies. I would say, failing that, you can staff for the first three. You cannot staff for the fourth one. If you are the leader, if you are driving change, whether you're the top leader or representing something or the leader of your family or whatever it may be, you have to actually embody that change. And embodying change is truly that, where you look at what are some of the things that have gotten me here and what do I need to unlearn to give way for being relevant in a different future. And I think a lot of people, they say, no, I'm fine. I'm just getting by. I'm surviving, but really what they're just fighting through and trying to fool themselves that actually they have the capabilities and the surplus to also take on the next chapter. So I think this is really about the whole principle of leading from behind, leading from the side, etc., at the next level, where you take the time to say, what do I need to be the person that people will follow in a new context? Because again, take us through the whole thing and imagine that you are a company, you've developed a great service, you have people working there. You have digitized that knowledge. It's now in a database. You have made it an AI, and suddenly you're actually a services model that you need to be deployed into other people's businesses. Who are you, and what type of leader do you need? Most people, they would say, but I have a great team. I'm really comfortable with that. That's what I do. When in fact, you're offering the exact same service. You're actually positioning well to scale, but you need to show up in a very different way to be that AI in someone else's business versus the person walking into a room with 5 people that sit around one table.
Right. But think, folks, the difference you then become in your new organization, your new industry, with the opportunity it then's created for you. And so many people are like, right? And that's where we go back to the first one. Did you envision with ambition what that could become?
Yeah.
You're on the way. Yet so many entrepreneurs then get scared to leave the nest to take that next big leap. They say, I'll just make the nest a little bigger. I'll put some more twigs here around the nest. We'll now get to 6 people in the room so that, we're obviously bigger instead of 600 people in a different room because we grew and we did this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the embodying with presence is also something that people typically learn elsewhere and they need to bring into the workplace. The people who don't embody are the ones that keep saying, you just go over there. I'll be right behind you. Right. We're moving this direction, versus those that step forward comfortably and actually acknowledge that they don't have all the answers, but they're willing to take those steps and create a space of trust that others then can follow.
Wow. Okay. I've been talking so far. I'm not done with her, but I've been talking with Louisa Loran. You can learn more at louisaloran.com, right? You can go right to her website. It's her name. Just check the heading of the thing or read the show notes. If you're sitting there going, I don't know how to spell something as easy as Louisa Loran. Okay. She's also the author of Leadership Anatomy in Motion. Easiest place to get it, of course, as said, with anything when it comes to a book, at least, is Amazon, right? Heck, they're the easiest way to get everything out there. Okay. I said to you at the beginning how long we were going to approximately run an episode for. And I don't know if you've been looking at a clock, but we're almost there, right? And the conversation went like that on one topic that you had. If you wanted to grab another topic and say, Chad, let's talk for another 5 or 10 minutes. Here's what I want entrepreneurs, leaders, right? I use the word almost similar, leaders to pay attention to understand, to know, to grow their lives, their family, their world around them. What should we talk about still, Louisa?
I think that the thing that's still worth thinking about here is because what we've talked about are behaviors. It's all about the how. And that's, of course, let's say, the thing that I believe everyone can train, both for business and for life. What I do when I work with people as their advisor is then we bring that into the world of what do you do?
Love that.
The principle of this is truly that the more you train the behavior, actually you spend less time and energy on all the things that distract decision making today. So even when I do work with the advisories, we spend a lot of time on this, and then they simply become much sharper in their decisioning, because you have already expanded your frame. You are much more curious about what's moving in the market. You are much more effective at saying, what are the partners that we need to bring in from a capability perspective? And you don't get all emotional about what are we going to do? How are we going to manage? You actually just make sharper decisions. And I think that's really important in a current time like now, where there's so much news and it's trying to confuse us like crazy people, right? And what is needed is someone to actually find some clarity to able to steer their lives and their businesses forward. So as a tool, this is the how, but it doesn't mean that there's a completely different what. It's the tool to achieve a sharper what.
I like that. I'm sitting over here. There's a pause because I'm actually listening. Right? I'm not in interview mode. I'm actually sitting here going, oh, I'm liking what, this is making a lot of sense, people. So if our audience could do one action that would sharpen them as a leader, just one. You don't know who's listening. You don't know the people out there other than their leaders, whether that's at work or at home or just to themselves, or what's one action you would tell every person they should take on to sharpen their skills immediately?
Well, I'm a little bit split, because normally when someone asks me that, I always say, be open.
Okay.
That's the thing that you will learn the most from.
That's a great answer right there. And before you go on to your other answer of the I'm split, Chad, let's talk be open for a moment, and then we'll go back to it. You're talking the curiosity part. You're talking the being willing to collaborate part. You're talking I think somebody might have a better way to do it.
Exactly. And I think it's not about being indecisive. It is exactly just continuously understanding that you learn. I mean, exactly like I've done. I've moved myself through very different industries to challenge my thinking, not to have confirming biases and say this is how it is because I know, but be open, be curious. And if you then validate your answer, it's a better answer because you've already validated. But people are closed. They don't actually open up first, and therefore we don't get to better answers.
Okay, now flip the coin, because you were split between decisions. What landed on the other side?
The other side is really much more on the embodying side. Like, be really, really clear on what's your value proposition. Because also I would say it is the flip of the coin, because the more you are open, the more you also get confirmed, this is me, this is not me. This is who I am, this is what I don't want to be. But I think that the point of especially also entrepreneurs, they're like, well, I'm the person who did this. This is what I am, and I need to do this because this is how entrepreneurs do it. But if you are really clear on what the value you are adding, you're not afraid of either restarting or saying, no, I'm actually no longer an entrepreneur, I'm a partner in this thing, or whatever it may be. So be very clear on that.
I love that last line, right? It's at some point you're going to look up, if you've been an entrepreneur and doing it properly, and say, I'm no longer an entrepreneur, I'm now a partner in something, because most likely you have found someone along the way to collaborate with, whether they were above you and you merged in, whether they were below you and you brought them up, whether they were equal to you and you guys came together, whatever that would be. But at some point we stop being an entrepreneur because we have something. We're not building something anymore. An entrepreneur has just become kind of that term of, I'm my own boss.
And if you keep holding on to that and just saying I'm a title, I'm an entrepreneur, instead of saying I know what my value is, then you won't connect to someone else. You won't get bigger. You won't redefine yourself. So it's a little bit of letting go of the title, or whether you're a parent or entrepreneur or whatever you want to be, but understand what your value is.
Can I put you on the spot?
I think you're going to do it anyway.
If you said no, I would not. All right. So
that's like when you ask kids, can I ask you a question?
Right.
You're like, well, I'm going to say yes because you're an authoritarian person, but I'm kind of feeling it's a bad thing you're going to ask.
No, it's very important that, one, we're open-minded. Yeah. I heard that. The other side of the coin is we know our value.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not working for Google. You're not working for any of those organizations now. What's your value?
Well, it's interesting because more people were scared about that than I was. I'm actually finding that my value is clearer now, because I am truly able to help people stand stronger within themselves and not be afraid of the change around them, the corporate pressure, whatever it is, so they get sharper. So what my value is instilling courage in people so they can achieve more.
How long did it take you to realize that? And then how long did it take you to put it into words so you could tell people your value when you were at an appointment, on a podcast, speaking to an organization that was considering hiring you, something? How long did it take you to realize it? And then how long did it take you to put it in words?
I would say people told me before I realized. So it's more a matter of how long did it take me to listen. It took me the point when I realized that I was worth at least as much when I didn't have the title, which some days was very fast and then there were setbacks, right? How long did it take to articulate it? Not long at all. Because I think when you repeatedly see the rings in the water you can spread, then it's not a title, it's not a badge, it's a brand.
Love that. Here's what I just heard, folks, that I want to make sure you heard. If you're not sure what your value proposition is, you're not listening clearly enough to what people are saying to you and about you. Because that's truly what your value proposition is. It's not some catchy phrase you came up with. It's not what you want it to be. It's what they're saying about you and saying to you that answers what your value proposition is. So folks, next time someone tells you to create a value proposition, go ask those around you what it is. That's Absolutely. A great takeaway from that one. All right. I've been talking with Louisa Loran, joining us all the way from Denmark. I do want to make this clear, Louisa, just between you and I, our audience probably don't care. I support UAE, Tadej Pogacar. I'm not a Visma Lisa Bike and Jonas fan. I do like Wout. Go Wout. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up here, yet I'm going to come to you for one more minute. So I'm going to let you think for a second as I give all your credentials again. I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up, whether it's something new or something you want to repeat. I've been talking with Louisa Loran. You can find her at louisaloran.com. That's going to be your easiest way. And you can get a copy of A Leadership Anatomy in Motion on Amazon. It'll be sent to you before you even think you want it, because that's the way Amazon works. All right. Before I wrap the episode, and thank you, Bob, for not being here today so we could have our conversation. Louisa, 1 minute on the clock. I don't care if you repeat something you've already said because it's that important, or it's something I didn't ask you that you were like, Chad, I really want to share this with your audience. You got 1 minute. What is it?
I would say that we've spent a lot of time talking about leadership. I also feel we've talked about legacy quite a lot, but what I think is just as important and ingrained into what we've talked about is your space of wealth and health. There is no doubt that wealth can take many different forms, but the pursuit of financial wealth is certainly something where you do need to be on top of this. But the wealth that you achieve by creating that space for people to join in and follow you and create the calmness for people to equally feel good in your presence is phenomenal. And last, of course, not least, the health that you achieve from actually being part of defining your own future and thriving, not just surviving, I think is a purposeful and intriguing and very, very strong position you have. And I love that I hopefully have given another nugget for people in that.
Absolutely. I love that our guest is taking Win, Make, Gives, Health, Wealth, Leadership, and Legacy and saying, I'm going to use my last minute, Chad, to tie all four of those together for you from today's episode. Folks, we have been talking with Louisa Loran, staying up late in Denmark. Louisa, we appreciate you making that happen for us, sharing with us, and we look forward to watching the success of your latest book.
Thank you very much, Chad. It's been a pleasure.
All right, folks, share this episode with somebody that needs to hear the information, because they do. And it's on you as the leader to say, check out this message. Maybe that's the person you want to collaborate and partner up with along the way. Until our next episode, as always, do good,